Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. We normally do the metagame breakdowns every week where we look at the stats from Untapped as well as other tournament sources to see kind of what's the trend in terms of the best decks in the format. We're still going to be doing those, but I thought we've been doing it for the last couple weeks, kind of spicy off-meta decks, kind of new decks that kind of emerged. So I wanted to do one for Standard. I went to my store championship. There's a lot of domain, a lot of tokens. Like there's a Sweet Demir list. There's a couple brews that folks brought. That kind of got me excited to kind of explore other strategies in Standard. So I'm going to cover 5 new decks today that you might want to take a look at. These all either got 5-0s in terms of MTGO, placed well in terms of Standard challenges, store championships, like top 8 finishes, stuff like that. So reasonable success with them, while maybe not the biggest sample size, but gives you some ideas in terms of what you can play. So I'll paste all these deck lists so you can copy them over as you'd like. But let's jump into it. So the first one is Sultai Surprise from Betoza. They went 5-0 in an MTGO league. And this deck here is looking to cheat into play some big creatures. So we have Atraxa in here, Bonnie Paul, Glarb. This lets you play lands and spells from... Play lands from the top of your library, cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library, help you set up Surveil. So it's kind of ramp in a way that you get to play extra lands, more card advantage than ramp. But Harvester of Misery can be removal early, but it can also be a 5 mana threat, so it gets you some value there. Hostile Investigator for hand hate, and then Thorn Vault Forager as a way to accelerate. Pretty much play any of the 2 mana accelerants in this place, so if you have another one, this being a rare. This one, you don't have any other squirrels, so it doesn't really matter. There's the one that can put counters on itself with Offspring. That might just be better, to be honest. Just give you that kind of value. You could forage with this, so it does allow you to kind of pseudo ramp. So that might be why it's included in that case. Vaultborn Tyrant is kind of your big other payoff with addition to Atraxa. So you're trying to cheat into play using Smuggler's Surprise. We've seen this in Gruul versions, stuff like that. We also have Heaped Harvest as another way to ramp, gain you some life, gets you some value. Deadly Cover Up as a sweeper. Then we have Tarian's Journal, 2 mana here. Sacrifice another artifact or creature, draw a card, activate only as a sorcery. Likely not going to be used for that mode, but for 2 mana, you can discard your hand and transform the journal. And then the journal basically lets you cast a creature card from your graveyard with a finality counter on it. So gets you some value and is kind of pseudo ramp in the late game if you run out of cards. Bitter Triumphs, Cut Downs, Go for the Throats, all removal, along with Urgent Necropsy. That just can be a flexible removal spell to hit a bunch of different things. Virtue of Persistence, another early removal, gains you some life, and then can be a reanimation effect. 25 lines in this list. And then you have your sideboard, just more removal, sweepers, hand hate in here. Like Go for the Throats, Cut Downs, another Harvester Misery for the Go Wide decks, Negates for the kind of bigger mana decks when you need counters, Tranquil Fellback, Graveyard Hate, Artifact Enchantment Hate, Life Gain, then Urgent Necropsy, just another flexible spell. So many enchantments, artifacts going around. Think like the Caretaker's deck. You can like hit a Planeswalker, hit an enchantment, hit like a Forge all in one shot with this card, so it's really flexible. This deck does require a lot of mythics. I'm missing like 11 mythics to build this deck, and I have a pretty sizable collection. So next deck we have, this one is Jeskai Control from K-Ball. They went 7-2 in the challenge for, I believe, top 8. So this is kind of an adaptation of the kind of Boros tokens, shifting it a little bit more control oriented. We have Ral Crackling Wit added to the deck. This lets you get otters, can be draw discard, and then can create an emblem that your instant sorcery spells have storm. Works nicely with like Lightning Helix, for example. Just keep storming off Lightning Helix, could be another win condition in itself. Plays well into the theme that you already have with Archangel Spell, Carrot Cake. The engine is Caretaker's Talent. This version's also got Builder's Talent, so another talent that hasn't seen as much play. Comes into play for the first level, gives you a 0/4 wall. Level 2, whenever one or more non-creature, non-land permanents you control enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So Carrot Cake coming in. You have like a lot of incidental things that kind of trigger this. And then 5, you return target non-creature, non-land permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. Helps you recycle stuff. Couple Bezas as your only creatures. You have a braids that help with the mirrors to hit the forges. So there's no forges main in this one, notably. You're playing a little bit more planeswalker talent, planeswalkers and the talents. Destroy Evil, Get Lost, Lightning Helix, 3 steps ahead is some counters that you can also use as a copy effect. Even in a pinch, if you have to copy Beza, could be useful. Torch the Tower as early removal as well. The sideboard, just another Braid for removal, some more Bezas for the aggressive decks. The Cut Seals Flanker, just a flexible card, life gain, graveyard hate, as well as just counters, mostly for like graveyard hate, I would imagine, on a creature. Lauren, flexible artifact enchantment hate. Again, negates when you want counter spells for the bigger mana decks. Sunder the Gateway. This is being brought in as a way to deal with artifacts or enchantments. Now, notably, this is non-token artifacts. It is a sorcery. It's got the flexibility that when you don't need that effect, you can just incubate to create a token. And then Tidebinders, tracks a trigger, leyline binding trigger, any sort of like triggered ability, you got that covered. For Brass Forge for the grindier matchups. Moving on, we go to Selesnya Artifacts by Cygnus. They went 6-2 in one of the challenges. This is kind of like Simic cookies, but without the Simic and more on the white side. So a lot of creatures in this deck, 31 in total. And the artifacts will be coming from these creatures. So Kellen makes map tokens and can be card advantage from attacking. Novice Inspector makes artifacts. Regal Bunnicorn goes wide. Gets tall the more you go wide with just various artifacts, stuff like that. Sentinel of the Nameless City makes you more map tokens. So all these creatures kind of have an effect. Steel Seraph is really nice with the Bunnicorn. Give that bunny flying. It can be lifelink in a pinch. Sir Ginger gets bigger whenever an artifact is put into the graveyard, and they get to scry. Has trample, haste, as long as opponent controls planeswalker. So text can be somewhat reasonable, but more likely it's just going to be a scalable creature with all the artifacts going to your graveyard. Teeth and Wormlink gets bigger when artifacts come to play. Tough Cookie can animate all those artifacts, and Warden of the Inner Sky, like we've seen in Convoke decks, can get bigger and set up your draws. Get Lost, Duskgross Reliquary, flexible removal options. Your sideboard, you got a Johnny for the grindier matchups, card advantage, counters, and then an emblem with poison that can beat any sort of life gain decks, stuff like that. Similar Archangel Elspeth, just differentiating your planeswalkers. So in heavier sweeper matchups, your Sunfall matchups, stuff like that, you throw in some Archangels. Haven Interrupter is another one that's nice against the sweeper decks, where you can flash it in and then just plot it, could buy you another turn with temporary lockdown, or a Sunfall that can potentially steal you the game. Destroy Evil, again, another card that's nice, blows up those temporary lockdowns, all the various talents, whether it be Caretaker, Innkeepers, whatever it may be. More removal, and then Tail Swipe, just in terms of like the smaller creature mirrors, just gives you a fight effect. Oh, I had Selesnya Artifacts twice. So we then go to Simic Terror. So this is from the Hurryuya in Japan Store Championship. This list got top 8. And it is a Simic deck, and it is a Tolarian Terrors deck. So what this deck's trying to do is fill your graveyard to get a reduced cost Tolarian Terror, so cost as little as 1. There's the Eddie Merc Crab, which is another card of a similar capacity. Costs 1 less for each instant sorceries in your graveyard. It enters tapped if it's not your turn. And when it enters tap up to 2 target creatures. So just flexible all-around card. Play it on your opponent's turn, tap them down. Flash Threat, that's just 2 mana for the most part for a 5/5 flash that taps some stuff down. Pelagi fills your graveyard while finding you some creatures. Hornlock Whale, another kind of tempo play. Sightsail Larcenist as removal. Frill back as artifact hate, enchantment hate, graveyard hate for your opponent. Life gain kind of mixed in. Analyze the Pollen can help you either find basic lands or collect the evidence to tutor for a card. You're putting a lot of cards in your graveyard. Bushwhack we've seen as another way to either find lands early or fight late. Sleight of Hand for another way to get some card advantage. Cash Grab fills your graveyard and then puts permanent, so you kind of mill over, find your good card. Into the Flood Maw as a bounce effect. Reasonable Doubt as counterspell, and then you could suspect a creature to give it menace. So give one of your big creatures menace. So kind of tempo oriented. You do have a lot of sorceries, I would say. So it's less like that mono blue deck where just everything was instant speed, counter, counter, counter. We don't have op, there's stuff like that, but you can kind of play the early game, some counters, suspect your big thing, kind of smash in. Up the beanstalk also in here, just kind of hiding out down here. Draws you cards off of any of these big creatures, so it's kind of an engine in itself. Sideboard, you got Bonnie Paul, just another bigger creature. If they're attacking your graveyard, you can bring this in. Haywire Might, Artifact Enchantment Hate, another Hornlock Whale, early interaction, and then a big beater. Sightsail Larcenist is removal, negates, pick your poisons is a flexible card. Gives you Artifact Enchantment and flying creature coverage against heavy counterspell, or like removal, Sunfall style decks. You can bring into Fairy. 3 steps ahead is a counter spell when you want some more counters, and another Tranquil Throwback. So cool list here. Simic's not a deck you see that often. And then the last one, this one is Azorius Powerstones. It was top 8 of the challenge. And this one here, it is kind of a Simulacrum Synthesizer deck that's leveraging some Power Stone synergies. We have Thran Spider in here. Can help you ramp. It also triggers a Simulacrum. An Urza in here that you can flip with, I'm assuming, 100%. Yeah, Mightstone Meekstone is in here. Cityscape Leveler. This card has dropped in price a lot. Like 40, 50 bucks when Mono Green was a thing. Get Lost hiding in there. Braided Nets removal that triggers the Simulacrum. Fabrication Module helps you ramp, which is nice. And then you can kind of exile 1 or more other artifacts you control, total mana value X, return target artifact. So you kind of, if they blow up your Simulacrum, you can get it back. Blast Casket as removal. Iron Crag for ramp. Mightstone Meekstone, another flexible card. It could be card draw, it could be removal, it could be ramp. Unstoppable Glyph Bridge as kind of a sweeper effect. So it gives you some coverage there, and then it could be a win condition on its own. It kind of forces your opponent to either cast spells or attack. Lava Spur Boots, some protection. It can give haste to like your Cityscape Leveler, stuff of that nature, or your just big Simulacrums. Spring-Loaded Saw Blade as another removal spell. Also has like Fumari Vault in here as another way to find some artifacts. A lot of utility lands. Sideboard, you have Bezas in here for the heavy kind of aggressive decks. Gain some card advantage. Chromho Seed Shark. If they're taking out removal, go for the throats. You can bring it in. Gives you another angle of attack. Cityscape Leveler just blows up random stuff. Strokes, Smites in here. So some counters, some early removal. Portal to Phyrexia just to go bigger over the top of decks. Steel Seraph can be early life gain, can be a flexible card, could give you evasion. So they're playing something like a lot of tokens. You can have a 10-10, they can have a 1-1, you're not getting through. This can give some evasion. And then Stone Brain for any sort of combo deck, stuff of that nature. So that is it for 5 new spicy decks for the week. Let me know what you think, if any of these jump out to you, if you have any spicy decks yourself. And let me know what you think of this segment, if you want me to keep doing it in addition to the best decks. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay safe out there.